Hi, this is Rod Saunders from Jew and Greek. Hope you're all doing well today. Whenever people discuss the subjects of God and science, the name Albert Einstein is inevitably invoked. And there's a good reason for that. There's nobody in the history of science who is held in higher regard than the Nobel Prize-winning physicist who gave us the theory of relativity, which produced the famous equation E=mc². For that reason, both believers and unbelievers have sought to claim Einstein as one of their own. But what did Einstein really believe? First of all, let's establish a framework for the subject. Einstein lived to be 76 years old. In the book Albert Einstein Autobiographical Notes, he stated, "I came, though the child of entirely irreligious parents, to a deep religiousness which, however, reached an abrupt end at the age of 12. So according to Einstein, he had a strong faith up until age 12. That means that he had 64 years to ponder the issue. Now, I don't know about you, but I've changed my views on a number of issues since I was 12 years old, especially religion. Despite his brilliance, Einstein was human, and thus quite capable of wandering around theologically. Einstein was born in Germany in 1879, at a time when the vast majority of the country was Christian. Although his parents were Jewish, they weren't practitioners of any one faith. In an interview published in Time magazine, Einstein stated, "As a child, I received instruction both in the Bible and in the Talmud. I am a Jew, but I am enthralled by the luminous figure of the Nazarene." Knowing this, we would have to conclude that the biggest religious influence on Einstein in his youth was Christianity, although he was obviously exposed to Judaism as well. The above quotation was followed by, "Through the reading of popular scientific books, I soon reached the conviction that much in the stories of the Bible could not be true. The consequence was a positively fanatic orgy of free thinking, coupled with the impression that youth is intentionally being deceived by the state through lies. It was a crushing impression. Mistrust of every kind of authority grew out of this experience, a skeptical attitude toward the convictions that were alive in my specific social environment, an attitude that has never again left me, even though, later on, it has been tempered by a better insight into the causal connections. It is quite clear to me that the religious paradise of youth, which was thus lost, was a first attempt to free myself from the chains of the merely personal, from an existence dominated by wishes, hopes, and primitive feelings. Out yonder there was this huge world, which exists independently of us human beings, and which stands before us like a great eternal riddle, at least partially accessible to our inspection and thinking. The contemplation of this world beckoned as a liberation, and I soon noticed that many a man whom I had learned to esteem and to admire had found inner freedom and security in its pursuit. The mental grasp of this extra-personal world within the frame of our capabilities presented itself to my mind, half consciously, half unconsciously, as a supreme goal. Similarly motivated men of the present and of the past, as well as the insights they had achieved, were the friends who could not be lost. The road to this paradise was not as comfortable and alluring as the road to the religious paradise, but it has shown itself reliable, and I have never regretted having chosen it. From this we can conclude that not only did Einstein come to reject the Bible in favor of science, he also came to embrace science as a sort of religion in its own right. Many atheists, scientists, and naturalists have labeled Einstein as either an atheist or agnostic. Take this quote from the atheist evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, for example. "Einstein sometimes invoked the name of God, and he is not the only atheistic scientist to do so, inviting misunderstanding by supernaturalists eager to misunderstand and claim the illustrious thinker as their own." So, according to Dawkins, Einstein was an atheist. but according to biographer Walter Isaacson, he wasn't. When asked if he believed in God, he said, "I'm not an atheist. The problem involved is too vast for our limited minds. We are in the position of a little child entering a huge library filled with books in many languages. The child knows someone must have written these books. It does not know how. It does not understand the languages in which they are written. The child dimly suspects a mysterious order in the arrangement of the books, but doesn't know what it is. That, it seems to me, is the attitude of even the most intelligent human being toward God. We see the universe marvelously arranged and obeying certain laws, but only dimly understand these laws." Einstein not only believed in God, he saw God as both the author of the laws of the universe and the arranger of the universe. Israeli physicist Max Jammer was friends with Einstein, and in his book, Einstein and Religion, he quoted Einstein as saying, "I am not an atheist, and I don't think I can call myself a pantheist." In view of such harmony in the cosmos which I, with my limited human mind, am able to recognize, there are yet people who say there is no God. But what really makes me angry is that they quote me for support of such views. Every scientist becomes convinced that the laws of nature manifest the existence of a spirit vastly superior to that of men. The divine reveals itself in the physical world. My God created laws. His universe is not ruled by wishful thinking, but by immutable laws. I want to know how God created this world. I want to know His thoughts. From these quotes, we can see that Einstein expressed the belief in a supreme being who designed and created the universe and the laws of the universe. Dawkins got it wrong. In fact, Einstein was more tolerant of people of faith than he was of militant atheists. Here are a few more quotations from various times in his life. "I want to know how God created this world. I am not interested in this or that phenomenon, in the spectrum of this or that element. I want to know His thoughts. The rest are details." This was written around 1920 in a letter to a student named Esther Solomon. While he may not have believed in a personal God who is concerned about the trivial matters that mere mortals have to deal with, he certainly seemed to envision a supreme being who created the universe in this text. He describes a thinking deity whose thoughts he wishes to know. In 1929, he told Rabbi Herbert Goldstein, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the harmony of all that exists, but not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and actions of human beings." Now, in order to understand this statement, you have to know what Spinoza believed. Baruch Spinoza was a 17th century Dutch philosopher. Like Einstein, he was a European Jew who departed from the conventional worldview of his people. While he completely rejected the view of a personal deity who speaks to man and interacts with people in the sense of rewards and punishment, he was not an atheist. He believed in an abstract and impersonal God in a manner that is usually branded as classic pantheism or panentheism. He was first influenced by the French philosopher René Descartes, a devout Catholic who emphasized rationalism. Later on, his main influence became Stoicism, the belief that the best approach to life is to understand the laws of the universe and to seek to cooperate with those laws, rather than to implore God to change those laws. Spinoza saw God as somehow existing within the universe rather than outside of it, while also being infinite. In his view, God is both comprehensible and incomprehensible. God did not create the universe because the universe is an extension of God and is therefore self-existent. If that sounds confusing, that's because it is, especially when we consider the fact that science has since concluded that the universe did in fact have a beginning, which Einstein was certainly aware of, having lived long after this consensus was reached in the first half of the 20th century. Nevertheless, this was Einstein's religion. Though religion may be that which determines the goal, it has nevertheless learned from science, in the broadest sense, what means will contribute to the attainment of the goals it has set up. But science can only be created by those who are thoroughly imbued with the aspiration toward truth and understanding. This source of feeling, however, springs from the sphere of religion. To this there also belongs the faith in the possibility that the regulations valid for the world of existence are rational, that is, comprehensible to reason. I cannot conceive of a genuine scientist without that profound faith. The situation may be expressed by an image. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. Here we see Einstein tipping his hat to religion in its quest to solve the mysteries of life and gain understanding. When I am judging a theory, I ask myself whether, if I were God, I would have arranged the world in such a way. This was stated during a discussion with his assistant, Banesh Hoffman. Here again we see an apparent reference to a supreme being, a creator with supreme intelligence. What really interests me is whether God could have created the world any differently. In other words, whether the demand for logical simplicity leaves any freedom at all. This was stated to another assistant named Ernst Strauss. I believe that this is the God-given generalization of general relativity theory. Unfortunately, the devil comes into play, since one cannot solve the new equations. He said this in referring to his unsuccessful attempts to find a theory that unified his theory of general relativity and quantum theory. Here, Einstein is apparently using religious metaphors rather than literal references to spiritual beings. Nevertheless, the imagery is interesting. Was he somehow invoking God into his equations? Some have concluded that that was the case. I can, if worst comes to worst, still realize that God may have created a world in which there are no natural laws. In short, chaos. But that there should be statistical laws with definite solutions, i.e., laws that compel God to throw dice in each individual case, I find highly disagreeable. This was another reference to quantum mechanics. Einstein saw the universe as orderly and predictable, and he had a hard time embracing the seemingly chaotic unpredictability observed in the subatomic world of quantum physics. Had God been satisfied with inertial systems, he would not have created gravitation. Yet another reference to God as creator. My position concerning God is that of an agnostic. I am convinced that a vivid consciousness of the primary importance of moral principles for the betterment and ennoblement of life does not need the idea of a lawgiver, especially a lawgiver who works on the basis of reward and punishment. Here, Einstein appears to be equating his belief in the God of Spinoza with agnosticism concerning the existence of a personal God. In the temple of science are many mansions, and various indeed are they that dwell therein, and the motives that led them thither. Many take to science out of a joyful sense of superior intellectual power. Science is their own special sport, to which they look for vivid experience and the satisfaction of ambition. Many others are to be found in the temple who have offered the products of their brains on this altar for purely utilitarian purposes. Here we see the greatest example of Einstein's deification of the universe and his devotion to the religion of science. From all of this, we can conclude several things. Einstein was not a follower of Judaism or Christianity, although he had ample exposure to both. Einstein expressed respect for religion and used religious imagery when discussing science. Einstein expressed a belief in a God of creation in several instances. Einstein seemed to suggest the belief that God gave him the theory of relativity on at least one occasion. Einstein claimed to believe in the God of Spinoza, who is a pantheistic God who had no need to create the universe since the universe had no beginning and is an extension of God. Einstein's expressed views on God are at times contradictory and hard to nail down, but he never clearly described himself as an atheist. To the contrary, he denied being an atheist. The fact that Einstein wasn't an atheist doesn't prove that God exists, just as it wouldn't prove that God doesn't exist if he had described himself as an atheist. But what I take away from all of this information is simply this. Those who dismiss the belief in God in whatever theological form as outdated, irrational, and silly have to explain how one of the greatest minds in the history of science could have expressed the clearly religious views that we have discussed. You can't have it both ways, preserving your beautiful secularist cake while you gobble it up. You can't say that religion is nonsense and that people who espouse religious views are stupid without applying that to Einstein. And if you don't apply it to him, you can't justify applying it to anybody else. Thanks for watching.